Thank you for downloading this Brum Radio podcast. For more podcasts, visit brumradio.com.
And now, for your listening pleasure, it's the Brum Picture Show, brought to you by Brum Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Brum Picture Show on Brum Radio, a weekly film show covering local, independent and world cinema, brought to you by Birmingham-based community cinema collective Screen B14. Well, love is in the air tonight at the Brum Picture Show. That's right, it's that time of year again, where all the single people out there are made to feel even more cripplingly lonely than usual. That's right, it's the week of Valentine's Day, so today we will be discussing romantic films, and maybe give all of you sickeningly loved-up people in relationships some ideas for date night viewing. And who better to discuss this topic than three embittered loners? My name is Paul Vernon, and without further ado, let's introduce my tragically single colleagues. First up, we have the ever-faithful and multi-talented Nadine O'Mahony.
Hello, my name's Nadine. I like long walks on the beach and snuggling up to watch films. I equally like going out and staying in and eating food like every other human being. So I'm a filmmaker in my own right. I co-present the show with Paul, and I'm the programmer and marketing officer for Screen B14, a community cinema and film collective based in South Birmingham.
Hello, Nadine. Thanks for joining us again. Now, I'm sure regular listeners will be wondering, where's Rory? Where's Rory?
Boo.
Well, boo to him, we say. Not only is he still busy making films, but he's also in a relationship. So he's apparently in the process of orchestrating a week-long celebration for his partner. It's going to be very expensive and spectacular.
Lots of surprise gifts, I hear.
So,
gold.
So if he doesn't follow up on that, he's going to be in trouble. Hope she's listening. But don't worry, once again, we have upgraded and we have been joined by Screen B14's favourite autocrat, despot and tyrant, our dear leader, Mr. Ben Thomas.
It's a pleasure to be back.
It's a pleasure to have you back, Ben. So coming up in the show, we will indeed be discussing our favourite romantic films and give you ideas for Valentine's Day, whether you're in a relationship or desperately, desperately alone. But first of all, it is time for the news section. So what has caught our eye in the news this week? Who's going to go first?
I have a news.
Oh, that's nice.
I've got a couple of newses, actually.
Ooh.
So Netflix has axed a nearly finished film starring Halle Berry. So they've joined the ranks of HBO, and the Netflix film chief just said there was just a lot of issues. Just a lot of issues with this film. They're still working with Halle on something else coming up, but yeah, we won't see that film.
What was the film?
So the film was called The Mothership, as confirmed by Variety, and it finished filming in 2021, but couldn't be completed. There was delays in post-production. I think there might have been VFX. There was just loads of issues, as the chief has said. And yeah, it's just another in a long line of Hollywood films that we won't be seeing anytime soon. And since 2022, Warner Brothers has axed 3 films. HBO, beginning to see a bit of a trend.
Yeah, this is quite a worrying trend. Why do they keep doing this?
Netflix has said it's very rare, and it's not the first time they've done this, but I guess it's the first time it's really hit the headlines, Halle Berry being a big star. And I think just, like we say, coming on the tail of these other films that have been cancelled. People put so much into films, even bad films.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching The Fast Show the other day, and there's a bit where one of the characters goes, even bad films are great, aren't they? Because at least they try. And
they're brilliant. Is that the
brilliant?
It's brilliant.
That was so good.
That film's brilliant.
Yeah. So even bad films are great, aren't they? Because at least they try. But yeah, because people try so hard, even on bad films, and they deserve to at least have their work out there in some form.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a big studio version of it's about the journey, not the destination. Like they're actually just falling in love with the filmmaking process. It's like this doesn't even need to go anywhere. It's just about the relationships and the friends we make along the way. And, you know, even if we just get rid of it, it's fine because you know we all had a great time making it, even though it didn't go anywhere.
That's kind of like my entire music career, really.
Yeah, and my journalism career and podcasting career as well.
Yeah. Well, that's early days, you know. Soon we'll be getting that $1 billion Spotify deal. You mark my words.
Come on,
Joe
Brum
Rogan.
Radio,
Joe
Come
Rogan,
on.
watch your back.
We're
Well,
coming for you, mate.
um,
But yeah, apparently it just wasn't that good, I guess, or just wasn't coming together. But yeah, so that was my first bit of news.
okay, that's a good bit of news. You say first bit of news. Like,
Yeah, I've got
there's a
another bit of
second-
news.
Ooh.
So I know most of you don't know what Paul looks like, but I have to assure you that he's a dead ringer for filmmaker Gareth Edwards,
That's right.
director of Rogue One and The Creator, which got a Oscar mention for VFX. But Gareth, you might not know, is a bit of a local boy. And has been given the freedom of Nuneaton.
Freedom of Nuneaton. That is.
And there's a lot of freedom in Nuneaton.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he says, it's nice to come home and be put in my place by my sister. But yeah, like
Yeah.
could be winning an Oscar, but that pales in comparison.
Yeah, who needs an Oscar when you got the freedom of Nuneaton?
Exactly. What
So-
is the
yeah, what does
you
that
can just
entail?
do whatever you want
He can
as
just
long
roam the streets nude,
killing people,
kicking kittens, and
taking drugs.
So don't worry, I'm Gareth Edwards.
I got the freedom of Nuneaton, mate.
and I resemble the incredibly handsome Paul from Picture Show.
It'll go back home to Nuneaton and they'll be like, you look like Paul from Brum Radio.
Who we've seen on the radio.
Well,
I like the idea that for years to come, people look at Nuneaton as just a hotbed for filmmaking, like the Nuneaton New Wave, and they'll just be like, oh, what an amazing period of film history that.
What a time to be alive.
that is a time to be alive. Well, congratulations, Gareth Edwards, and congratulations, Nuneaton.
Yeah.
I suppose. I wonder who else has the freedom of Nuneaton.
He might be the first.
He might be the first.
I mean, can you name anybody else from Nuneaton?
I swear I know someone from Nuneaton.
Who are they? There you go.
Yeah, no.
Gareth Edwards. It's Gareth Edwards,
Ooh.
and that's it.
That's it.
That's the hierarchy.
Good for you.
Gareth Edwards, the mayor of Nuneaton.
Ben.
My news story is that the restaurant in Paris that Ratatouille is based on has lost £1.3 million worth of wine.
What?
So the tagline of the article is, Chef Gusteau will be turning in his grave. The restaurant which inspired Disney's Ratatouille can't seem to find some of its wine. It's very expensive wine too. They apparently have lost 83 bottles of wine that they believe to be stolen, but they haven't confirmed. There's an investigation, which I'm sure you'll be glad to know, Paul. The man of justice, wine-based justice that you are.
I am.
So I'm going to really butcher some French. So it's La Tour d'Argent.
Tour d'Argent.
Thank you. One of the oldest restaurants in Paris has lost 83 bottles of wine.
Pretty expensive bottle.
Pretty expensive
Yeah.
bottles. And I have the most expensive bottle of those 83. And it is a bottle of Romane Conti, which was sold for £410,905 in 2018, becoming the most expensive bottle of wine in the world at that point in time. I think it's been overtaken now.
If you had something that expensive, you keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Careless losing it.
Yeah.
Of course.
Putting-
So I suppose the underlying implication is it was stolen by rats.
Or the opposite way around. They obviously hired Remy the rat to look after the kitchen, but maybe they should have got him on security as well.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
Quite a loose film story.
No, that's what we like.
Right.
Predominantly about wine.
Yeah.
A little bit
mean-
about film.
No, I like that. Previous listeners will remember I regaled the audience with a tale of rats performing a heist and stealing some food out of my fridge. So it's good to hear that the rats in France are keeping up that tradition and going up market, because all they stole out of my fridge was some Subway sandwiches.
And now we mentioned...
Well, that's French rats for you, isn't it? It's a different class of rats they've got over there.
And now we're on to our rat stories. Rory, who I live with, who is dead to us, but is actually alive in the real world, but dead in the podcast world.
I don't believe that.
He did a very romantic gesture, seeing as it's Valentine's week, which is he put a rat in his girlfriend's car.
What?
So they discovered it in... no, he didn't really. They found a rat in a car bonnet, which was disgusting. So that was a rat-based travesty, which is why Rory's not on the podcast this week. Actually,
he's still traumatized.
He's
still in trouble because
of
what he did.
Yeah. He's still in the doghouse, but no.
No, that's why he's got to plan this elaborate Valentine's Day week to make up for the rat prank. Exactly
right. Yeah. No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how the rat got there. But all I know is it should have been looking after this restaurant's wine rather than turning up in King's Heath
and hanging out in people's cars.
Yeah.
Well, that's lovely, isn't it?
Have you got any news, Paul?
I do, actually. Again, it's another production that has been halted.
What?
At least this one was halted in pre-production, and apparently was because of Jake Gyllenhaal's erratic behaviour. Did you read about this?
I read about this one.
So yeah, there was an indie movie called Suddenly that was in development, which was set to be a two-hander about a pair of lovers trapped on an inhospitably cold island.
Ooh,
and they were
going to...
I know, they were going to be due filming in the autumn of 2021. So I guess this is a story that has only recently come out because the director has given some interview recently where he's bemoaned the behaviour of Jake Gyllenhaal. But yeah, it was to be directed by Thomas Bidegain. Do we know? Does anyone know how to pronounce that name? Bidegain.
Bidegain.
So this was to be directed by Thomas, and with a script co-written by Valentine Moral, and it would have been his first step into Hollywood filmmaking. So it was going to star Jake Gyllenhaal alongside Vanessa Kirby, most recently of Napoleon, of course. This all kicked off during pre-production. So they arrived in Iceland, which was where they were constructing this massive set on a whaling facility or something. So Gyllenhaal turned up. So he arrived in Iceland, and then things began to go awry. And they first started to think that something might be wrong when he started demanding rewrites to the script, and also stripped down to his underwear and jumped in the freezing cold sea in front of the whole crew, proclaiming, "When I see the sea, I swim in the sea," which sounds to me like a dangerous policy, but he's Jake Gyllenhaal, man. You know.
In some countries, jumping into freezing cold water is, I think, isn't he part Swedish or something? I don't know.
The Gyllenhaal thing certainly sounds vaguely Scandinavian, doesn't it?
The Scandies like jumping in cold water, don't they, Paul?
Yeah, they do all the time. And
so maybe it's just a cultural.
And also, so do middle class people these days. But
I wouldn't know about that.
They're always getting into
cold water,
ponds and stuff.
Does he say it about other things as well? Does he
I think that was the main complaint.
When I see a sandwich, I eat the sandwich.
That's a fine philosophy.
I like that. Yeah.
When I see a crease, I iron my shirt.
When I see a bar of chocolate.
Yeah. So I don't think that's a massive problem. And another thing that he said was he was being very demanding about the colour of his hire car, and he said it should neither be red nor white. Which is not that unreasonable, I suppose.
Did he have a reasoning for it? As in, were there any?
No reason is given.
No, just
purely
aesthetic.
Purely aesthetic. I don't know.
I remember I read this, and the director was saying that in France, the director is in charge, basically. So he didn't like this idea of Gyllenhaal was getting a bit too big for his boots. He's the actor, he's the producer, but the director should be calling the shots.
And also, as a French director, he didn't very much appreciate Gyllenhaal and Kirby, apparently, reading the script aloud in mock French accents in the voice of Pepe Le Pew.
Okay, maybe that's going a little bit...
And also, for a scene on a boat, Gyllenhaal was trying to sell the idea that he slaps a fish. Which, I mean, I'd like to see all this, to be honest. Like, I wouldn't...
You know, sometimes it's those crazy moments.
Exactly.
Like, I watched Maestro recently, and if you've seen it, there's a moment with a giant inflatable Snoopy
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
character.
Yeah,
and
there
it's
is.
kind of like a bit out there, but it's like maybe that made the film. Like Ex Machina. There's a wonderful dance scene that seems to come out of nowhere, and that's, you know, what you remember about that film. So
That's
maybe if you're watching quite, you know, a semi-serious film with Jake Gyllenhaal and Vanessa Kirby in Iceland, and then in one crazy moment, Jake Gyllenhaal slaps a fish,
Yeah,
you know, you'd remember that film, wouldn't you?
exactly. And straight to the Oscars, I'd
Yeah,
say. You know.
it's those moments of madness that tip something over into genius.
I can empathise with the director though. For having done our own short filmmaking and the stress of that, I can imagine if my lead actor just turned around and went, "Hey, can we do a take where I slap the fish?" You'd just be like, "No, we're
let
like
him film
4 hours
it.
behind the schedule. You can't slap the fish."
I mean,
mate."
how long does it take to slap a fish? I think I'd have just let him do it.
I don't
mean,
know. When
was
Jake
the
Gyllenhaal's
fish
involved,
already
who
there?
knows? I mean,
Just indulge them.
yeah.
Just go, all right, get Jake a fish.
Was he trying to slap the fish underwater in the sea,
we
or was
just
it
don't
above
know,
land?
We
do
just- we
we?
really
There's
don't
just
know.
More
I mean,
questions.
I'd imagine in
than
Iceland there's lots of
answers.
fish just kind of lying around. so,
Yeah, it'd actually be
know.
harder
No.
not to slap a fish in Ireland. Iceland.
Iceland.
Okay.
So all this stuff happened. He also apparently insisted that the set builders should sleep in their cars to prevent COVID spread. I think that's quite reasonable.
I don't know. I
You
think
know.
that's a bit mean.
No, I don't know.
Why?
You're
Why?
just a Jake Gyllenhaal apologist, aren't you?
That's right, I am.
Sleep
been
in your
bought off.
car in solidarity with Jake.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't drive, but if I had,
Well, you would have had to sleep on the ground.
exactly. Well,
Sleep
I'd
on
have,
the bus.
I'd have slept under
On your
Jake
bike?
Gyllenhaal's car.
I thought you were going to
Just
say
isn't
under
it?
Jake
Under Jake Gyllenhaal.
Gyllenhaal. It's a completely different image I've got there.
That
Gin-
would be erratic behaviour.
Yeah.
It would.
You have to sleep under Jake Gyllenhaal to avoid the spread of COVID.
Oh dear.
Oh, I don't know if that's going to
Oh,
make it. I don't know
anyway.
if that's going to make it.
But the point is, it all ended happily, and now they've recast the film, rewritten it in French, and it's going to be, something else now. And now it's going to be called Suddenly Alone. So it's
Perfect
all right. It's
for
all
our
right.
Valentine's special.
Exactly.
Suddenly Alone.
And just for legal reasons, apparently director Thomas Bidon has clarified that Jake Gyllenhaal departed due to creative differences and not because of his requests to slap a fish.
Okay.
Which,
Which
Well,
in
that is
itself was a
creative.
creative
yeah.
difference,
I'm sure
so-
Jake would argue that he would have slapped
Yeah,
the fish
yeah.
creatively. So.
Yeah.
Exactly. You are listening to the Brum Picture Show on Brum Radio. Today we are going to be talking about romantic films. So, guys, what do we think of Valentine's Day? Do we like Valentine's Day? Do we like romantic movies?
I once got mugged on Valentine's Day,
Oh.
and that was probably one of the better Valentine's Days that I've had.
Oh my goodness.
I was at a nightclub with a friend, and I put my handbag down, and then it disappeared. And there was a guy from our school there, and he knew who'd done it, and so we went and chased after the guy, and I did get my bag back minus the contents. So yeah, that's one of my better Valentine's Days.
Well, there we go. That's heartwarming, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't really know how to follow that.
No.
I'm also not a huge fan of Valentine's
No.
Day.
Why do you hate Valentine's then?
I don't hate it.
Just
I'm kind
ambivalent.
of yeah. I'm sort of indifferent to it, which is probably a great view to have on a show about Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the vibe we're going for.
It's
I
kind
think,
of
on
like
this
our
one.
Wes Anderson
Yeah,
special.
yeah.
We're
kind
ambivalent.
of ambivalent towards this topic. Hooray!
I like a romantic film though. They're quite enjoyable to watch. To live vicariously through characters far more romantic than myself.
Well, that's the thing. Do you think? So I was thinking about this. There's a wonderful line in 500 Days of Summer, which is one of my favourite romantic films, where they say that Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character's entire outlook on love was driven by total misreading of The Graduate. So, do you think that in a way Hollywood has kind of ruined a lot of people's chances at love by giving this idealized notion of what the relationship
I think
should be.
definitely when I was growing up, I would like consciously think about it, and you'd have that movie syndrome where you're kind of like in the moment, but you're not in the moment.
Yeah.
I definitely had that. I like to think I've grown out of it slightly now, but I'm probably giving myself too much credit there.
Yeah,
but definitely, I think stories impact us generally, like romantic stories, but also like cynical stories or nihilistic stories. So yeah, I think romantic ones would definitely also fit that category of you're referencing moments, or when Harry Met Sally comes to mind about the two friends thing. So yeah, I definitely agree that that's something that would shape my approach to relationships.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't want to celebrate Valentine's Day, you can always celebrate Galentine's Day on the 13th of February.
Oh, yeah.
A global holiday that celebrates women's friendship. Sorry, guys. You're not invited to this one. But it's February 13th. Time to get together with your gal pals, go out to lunch, go out to a special Galentine's brunch, perhaps, bottomless brunch, imagined into existence by the writers of Parks and Recreation.
Oh.
So yeah, maybe we need a Manentine's Day or something. Maybe there needs to be a male equivalent, Malentine's Day.
We could have like
Go down the pub with your mates.
Every day is Valentine's Day.
We could have like a Palentine's Day about people who've been recently friend zoned.
Yeah.
And they can all
Or gender neutral Galentine's Day, Palentine's. Maybe that's something we should do, a Palentine's Day. We could gatecrash Rory and Lauren's wonderfully orchestrated romantic. Happy Palentine's, guys.
The week-long extravaganza.
Let's watch When Harry Met Sally.
Just on repeat for the whole week.
That sounds great. Yeah, he's always going on about that. When Harry
He
Met
loves
Sally.
that.
Yeah. He's got a poster in our flat of When Harry Met Sally. Yeah. So
that would have been his pick, I think.
Yeah, it definitely would have been. So yeah, I get to see what I don't have every single day. When Rory and Lauren are sat in the kitchen. No, I'm joking.
It's a choice, guys.
A choice. Yeah, exactly. But no. We're all not bitter at all. We're fine. I don't know. Do we think that romantic comedies are definitely kind of not as popular as they once were? And it's like we're definitely seeing, because I think there was a time when like literally every film would have some kind of love story kind of shoehorned into it, and that of course that still happens, but do you think it's on the decline a little bit? Are we becoming more,
well, maybe we're getting into more like alternative love stories now. I mean, at the cinema right now we've got Anyone But You, and that's quite a traditional rom-com, and that's done very well.
Oh yeah,
with Sydney Sweeney. But we've also got All of Us Strangers,
which
we might mention later. But I think one thing that Andrew Scott has mentioned was that there's a lot of tenderness between the two male love interests in the film, and that's something that he feels we haven't seen enough of. Yeah, so I think, maybe... And we've had a lot of really... I feel like the last year has been the year of the toxic romance. So I'm thinking Napoleon, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
Probably some other ones as well.
Poor Things, in a way.
Yeah, Poor Things,
Priscilla,
Priscilla, yes.
Of
So I
course.
think... I feel like, maybe Hollywood's fallen out with idealised love and sort of fallen in love with toxic romance,
Which I think is good. That's a more realistic expectation for people.
you don't seem to get the sort of like serial romantic comedy writer in the same way, do you? Like the sort of Richard Curtis's, like Nora Ephron, those types of writers where they sort of knock out like 5 or 6 of a similar style of film. It doesn't seem like we get those anymore. Yeah. But then, like what Nadine was saying, we're getting a kind of quite interesting breakdown of complex relationships that actually seems like quite a mature development in that area. And then we also have got stuff like Rye Lane, which I guess it's
fantastic.
It's not like an out and out romance, but there's obviously like chemistry and connection there, and it's got a playfulness to it, which is
definitely
really
a
awesome.
rom-com.
And it's brilliantly funny.
But like,
and then we've had stuff like What's Love Got to Do with It and films like that, which are kind of looking at different different like approaches to relationships culturally as well.
Well, we're showing past lives as well soon, and that's another kind of slightly alternative romance. I wouldn't say it was a toxic relationship at all, but it's a married woman and her childhood sweetheart, and a more kind of mature reflection on real love and like having conversations about things. It's not like the old days where it would have been all buttoned up and, it's like, let's have a chat about this. Let's be mature and adult about it. So, maybe we're just having more kind of different alternative looks at love and different kinds of love and, like I said, perhaps less that kind of perfect, idealised romance that we've had in the past.
I think that's certainly healthier for people, isn't it? So, well, Nadine...
Yeah.
I believe you have chosen a romantic film about which you would like to tell us.
Yeah, so my choice felt quite obvious to me. It's In the Mood for Love by Wong Kar-wai, starring Maggie Chung and Tony Leung Chil-wai. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. But yeah, In the Mood for Love is kind of the perfect title for this film because it's much more about atmosphere. The plot, yes, there is a plot, sort of, but it's much more about the mood, about the music. Music plays a huge role in this film. There's, quite a few songs by Nat King Cole in there. There's absolutely beautiful score, very gorgeous cinematography, absolutely exquisite costuming. I mean, Maggie Chung's wardrobe is to die for. She wears these cheongsams, these traditional Chinese silk dresses, in sort of a variety of prints and designs and, just looks like a supermodel. Absolutely gorgeous. And it's a very much a kind of brief encounter type story. They're both married to other people and they're very much living in each other's sort of pockets. They're sort of neighbours in a very overcrowded sort of tenement building. And squeezing past each other in the hallway, something's going to happen at some point, isn't it, guys? But it's also it's more of an affair of the heart. It's not, this isn't a sort of physical, passionate romance. It's much more what isn't said. And I won't, there's some, twists and turns in the story, so I won't give too much away. But it is a lot more about sort of feeling and sort of almost like the repressed emotion. And it's just a very beautiful film. Wong Kar-wai's process is a little bit unusual. He doesn't like to write a script, and he certainly didn't do one for this film because it took a rather long time to shoot, 15 months in total. Ooh. Maggie Chung said, I didn't know what I was doing for the first 9 months. She kept asking, who am I? What's going on?
Sounds like being in a David Lynch film.
Didn't get much answers, but she said, afterwards she said she was glad to have that process and to find the character in that way, but she certainly felt quite lost to begin with. I think she would ask Tony, what's going on? And he'd say, I don't know, ask the director. Production wrapped 4 times. So that tells you something. And Wang would come back and go, a bit Columbo, like, just one more thing. I've got another idea. He likes to find the story. And I saw a brilliant introduction from Ang Lee, who said, I wish I could make movies like that. I wish I could make movies without a script and sort of just tell the actors just to make it up and win all the awards. And it is one of the most critically acclaimed films of all time. So there's method to this madness. And it's worth mentioning that February is the month of Chinese New Year. So this is a perfect, if you want to watch something romantic and something to celebrate the Year of the Tiger, what better film than this? It's set in Hong Kong in the sort of 1960s. It was going to be called Summer in Beijing, but they changed the title. It was going to be 3 separate stories, but in the end, Wang decided to focus on the first one, which was In the Mood for Love. There is a short film called In the Mood for Love 2001 that was going to be part of this trilogy.
Space?
No, the actual year 2001.
Oh, sorry.
Which has never been seen apart from at a screening at Cannes, and it sort of I think it inspired him to do his first English language film, which I think was Blueberry Nights. And there was a third film apparently that was involved a kidnapping, but all of that went by the wayside and Wong concentrated on this first story, and I think we're all the better for it. There's a lot of stuff that he filmed that didn't end up in the final film. So in the end, he decided that they were going to take it to Cannes because he said we could be making this film forever. So I need some kind of deadline. And even then, it wasn't the final mix and everything, but people were just like, yeah, this is taking a long time. Like, we've got other films we want to be in, mate. But it's one of those things. It was a bit of a crazy production. The cinematographer left at one point to direct his own film. People were coming and going. But it worked for it, like a bit like Apocalypse Now. The chaos behind the scenes, led to, in a way, a better finished product, perhaps. So it's kind of mad that he got anything comprehensive at all out of that. But that's how he makes films. That's his process, man. Yeah. If you sign up for a Wong Kar-wai film, that's what you're signing up for, mate. So
that's quite a lot of freedom to be able to take that approach.
Yeah, well, it works. But like I said, it got nominated for the Palme d'Or. Tony Leung won Best Actor, first Hong Kong actor to ever win the award, Cannes. And yeah, it's sight and sound, one of the greatest films of all time. The critics poll that they do.
Because I think it's something that happened on like multiple of his films actually. Because he was making this epic samurai film, I think it was, called Ashes of Time, and he basically gets really bogged down in Ashes of Time, and then decides to stop and film another film, which then became Chungking Express, which is one of his other big ones. So it seems like it's something that's happened throughout his career, where he sort of is making one film, goes, this isn't working, I'm going to do something else, or I'm going to stop and then restart. And I think Christopher Doyle's kind of a similar type mind. He's the cinematographer.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just going to go off and direct film. Nice. So he had to bring in another cinematographer.
Yeah. I love In the Mood for Love, though. It's a brilliant film. It's kind of what Nadine said already, where it's quite... it's very subtle. It's a lot about distance and crossing boundaries and not crossing boundaries and
trying to connect.
Yeah, trying to connect and navigating loneliness, but then also navigating connection.
Perfect for us.
Loners. Visually, it's really interesting. There's it's quite a distant camera throughout the film, where a lot of the shots are coming through doorways or. Yeah, quite long lenses, and you see them at work and you see them leaving work and you see clocks going and you see them sitting in rooms, you see them coming through doorways, you see them passing on the stairs. And it's got this really, like you said, hypnotic rhythm to it, where it's quite slow and meandering in a way, but then the moments of connection are like really, really kinetic and bold. Yeah.
And if you like In the Mood for Love, there's a sort of sequel, 2046. I think they started filming it at the same time. Because he likes to juggle his plates. Some people don't like that one as much because the character, Tony Leung Chiu-wai's character, is quite different in that one, or people interpret him differently. So for some people, but that one, that's really star-studded. We've got Gong Li, Zhang Ziyi's in that. Really, all the big sort of names of Hong Kong sort of film around that time were in that film. So if you love that cinematography as well and that style and you want more, do check out 2046. There's an unusual kind of sci-fi element as well in it. So it's, so this one's set in the 60s and then that one is also set in the 60s, but with this kind of futuristic story that he's writing becomes part of the film as well. So really interesting. Do check it out if you like In the Mood for Love.
Well, that does sound like something I'd like to check out. I like films where no one knows what they're doing, really.
It's a hot mess. Well, this isn't quite a hot mess. But it's certainly, it's like I said, it's not very... If you like a kind of hard driving plot that's sort of racing ahead, it's not that kind of film.
I think that's the only thing I like. Other thing I'd say is obviously it's cropping up on Sight and Sound best films of all time lists, which I agree with, but it's not the most accessible film. So I know a lot of people who...
It is very art house.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who have seen it on those lists or got recommended it and thought it was this like really raunchy, romance that had like a lot, like Nadine said, a lot of action. When actually it's really, really
It's more contemplative,
exactly.
meditative.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the only sort of disclaimer I'd say for people who were going to watch it, which is it's amazing, but it's not a kind of exactly.
Yeah. So you wouldn't necessarily recommend it as a Valentine's night
I would.
date film.
If you're a bit open-minded.
Yeah.
Like I said, a lot of people love it. Most of the people I know that have seen it have loved it.
Okay.
But it depends on your taste, obviously. Like I said, it's much more of it might be the perfect Valentine's film because you don't have to keep too much of an eye on the plot.
Right.
If you know what I mean. Just set the mood, set the vibe. Put some nice music on. Put a bit of Nat King Cole on. Perfect.
Well, that sounds like the
Job done.
perfect recommendation then, Nadine. You are listening to the Brum Picture Show on Brum Radio, and we have been talking about romantic films for Valentine's Day week. So we've just heard Nadine talk about In the Mood for Love, and now I had been thinking a lot about what I wanted to talk about, and initially I wanted to talk about Takashi Miike's heartwarming 1999 romantic comedy Audition.
Which I vetoed.
Which Nadine vetoed. I don't understand why, because it's a lovely film about a widower who creates an audition for a fake romantic comedy, and he's trying to find his new wife through this audition process. And it's a lovely film, and is definitely something that you should watch on Valentine's. Get you in the mood.
Yeah, heartwarming,
mood.
life-affirming.
Yeah, but Nadine was like, no, you can't do that, Paul. That's not romantic. So I didn't do Audition. Well, the point is, I just wanted to ruin some Valentine's Day nights because I wanted to mislead people into thinking that Audition was actually a romantic comedy, because the first act of the film, it is a romantic comedy, but then it turns into one of the most harrowing horror films you'll ever see. So I just wanted to play a horrible trick on our listeners, really.
So bitter.
But I was... But I was vetoed. So I toyed with other ideas. There's obviously Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is a huge favourite of mine. There's 500 Days of Summer, which I mentioned earlier. True Romance, of course.
The title says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So that that would have been ideal. But in the end, I decided to talk about Her from 2013, which is, of course, directed by Spike Jonze, who started out making music videos for artists such as Björk.
Is it romantic?
What? Her? Yes, it is. That's what I'm going to argue now, right now.
Pays for it, Paul.
It's an incredibly romantic film, but also in a heartbreaking and harrowing kind of way. But yes, Spike Jonze, who obviously made Being John Malkovich and Adaptation, Where the Wild Things Are, and most bafflingly was heavily involved as a producer in Jackass, which is just something that I can't really marry up, really. He's obviously a zany guy, but it's just so funny that his films are so well respected that then he's also just messing around with Johnny Knoxville and getting into antics. But anyway, so this was actually the last film he directed, which is a shame. It's over 10 years old now, so I'd like to see Spike Jonze.
What's he been doing?
I don't know what he has been doing. I must ask him. So this is about Theodore, a man who makes a living writing letters for strangers who aren't capable of writing personal letters themselves. And he is getting over a breakup from Catherine, played by Rooney Mara, and they are going through a divorce. And in the process of this, Joaquin Phoenix falls in love with the disembodied voice of his operating system, voiced by Scarlett Johansson. Originally supposed to be voiced by Samantha Morton, which I feel so bad for Samantha Morton, because there she was on set every day acting in a little black box. And then
Was
it was
she?
yeah,
Was
yeah,
she really?
yeah. Throughout the whole production, it was Samantha Morton. So she was there on set in this little soundproof box, and
Wow.
they were instructed not to talk to each other during the production. And
And
then
that didn't work?
and then at some point in the post-production process, Spike Jonze was like, I want to go a different approach. We need to get Scarlett Johansson in. So they just scrapped all of Samantha Morton's.
I'd love to hear that version.
I'd love to hear, I know, but it's because apparently the initial cut was about 2.5 hours long, and then Steven Soderbergh came in, got it down to 90, and then the film that we wound up with is 126 minutes long. But yeah,
Okay.
but I do feel
What
bad.
was Steven Soderbergh doing?
He's just
editing.
He always
his
comes.
one?
Steven Soderbergh.
He's like, I can improve this.
Yeah, man.
How
He was
about
like-
black and white and silent?
That's what he does. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah, he was like step number 1, get Samantha Morton out of that box. And
Yeah.
it was Soderbergh's
and step
idea.
number 2,
Two.
half this film can go in the bin.
Yeah, no. But yeah, poor Samantha Morton. But she was credited as an associate producer in the end. But you would be
She got
gutted.
paid, but-
Gosh.
Yeah, she got
You
paid.
know.
Like, but yeah,
Yeah.
See, Hollywood,
You know-
they've got a precedent for just
just
scrapping
going,
stuff at the
sorry.
last minute.
Quite literally putting people in the box.
Because I mean Samantha Morton is amazing. So you know,
Yeah.
but obviously Scarlett Johansson's great too. But obviously for some reason they thought, because they even did reshoots and everything afterwards to change certain scenes with Scarlett Johansson's voice, and so anyway, that's pretty mad. But yes, the
These
point is-
directors, they don't know what they want, do they?
Exactly.
Let's shoot for 19 months. Let's get Samantha Morton in a box.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get Scarlett Johansson in instead. Let's scrap the mothership.
Exactly. But yeah, poor Samantha. Anyway, so Theodore falls in love with his operating system, and so this is just the disembodied voice of Scarlett Johansson.
So
And
it's
then
like Siri, isn't it?
yeah, so well, yeah, that's the
Or
thing.
Alexa.
That's the thing, because they develop this intensely emotional bond, and then some of his friends are very skeptical, especially his ex-wife, who says at some point, "You always wanted to have a wife without the challenges of actually dealing with anything real, and then here you are dating your operating system." But then some of his friends are kind of all right with it.
Go
And
for
so
it,
one of his
dude.
friends is played by Amy Adams, and she describes falling in love as like a socially acceptable form of insanity anyway. So why not
Yeah.
date your operating system? Just, love's a mad thing anyway, so you might as well date the digitally created, disembodied voice of Scarlett Johansson. And soon, with Elon Musk's Neuralink, we'll all be able to have Scarlett Johansson's disembodied voice in our heads. None of us will need
Right.
anyone ever again. So there we go.
Looking forward to it.
Anyway, but the question is, obviously, this sounds like a mad, quite creepy film, but I think it's a testament to Joaquin Phoenix's performance in particular, and just the direction of the film on a whole, that it is actually just an incredibly heartwarming portrayal of loneliness. He's a broken man who just wants an emotional connection. And I think the important thing about it is the fact that it is just Scarlett Johansson's voice, because obviously he is forming an emotional bond with this operating system. And the film wherein, Scarlett Johansson was a robot Scarlett Johansson that Joaquin Phoenix is getting down with, he might be a little bit less of a sympathetic figure, maybe, because...
I don't know if he's incredibly sympathetic in this film, to be honest.
I feel for him, man.
Oh,
He's
man.
just alone. He's just sad and alone.
Maybe
and-
for good reason. Did you ever think about that?
Well, there we go.
Maybe
That's,
his wife's got a point.
That's well, that just goes to show once again is just how your reading of a film can vary very much. And like, so I come out of this thinking this is incredibly
Joaquin.
romantic. Poor Joaquin.
Nadine's interpretation feels like those memes where they go like if plot points were different. So
Well,
like if
that's-
if DiCaprio came up to the microphone and said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave now," and then the end credits just roll. I feel like that's a version of it with his wife. Where he's, maybe the wife's right, and then the film just ends. It's like,
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
maybe.
interesting because if you do want to know the other side of the story, check out Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation.
Yes.
Because the two of them were married, and that's supposed to be her take on their marriage, and her is supposed to be Spike's take on the marriage. And I think that would be an incredible double bill. They're both great films, and they share the same production designer, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, weird connective tissue between both of those
Yeah,
films.
that's interesting. But that's interesting you had such a different reading of it, because I genuinely do think it's such a heartbreaking thing.
I
think it is.
like him.
But
he's not
like,
likable.
He is, but he's so lonely. He spends his time writing. He starts the film
but
writing
Travis
a love
Bickle
letter
is
for-
lonely and likes to write, but you know what I'm saying?
and he saves the day at the end.
I think you might be misinterpreting some of these films.
My concept of love was based on a total misreading of the film Her.
like in Her, it's generally quite a lonely world as well, though, isn't it? As in
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
lonely in a disconnected.
Exactly.
Maybe it's more of a commentary on where we're heading.
Well, that's the thing, 'cause that's
Yeah.
what I think is really interesting about this film is, so this is in 2013. So apparently Spike Jonze came up with the idea for this when it was in the early 2000s, when he was talking to one of the like early prototypes of a chatbot. And now in 2024, we actually are in a position where this science fiction film really isn't that much of a
it's
science
happening.
It is happening. Like, people are genuinely
Falling in love with ChatGPT.
Exactly. Like, Reddit is a flood with stories of people falling in love with chatbots and stuff. And there's
But
also
tragedy strikes. An update happens.
Yeah.
It's like, what happened to my lover?
Exactly.
They completely changed personality.
And that's what I think that's absolutely fascinating, because obviously what's interesting is the film obviously saw this stuff coming, but then it misses certain things, because like Joaquin Phoenix's whole profession, Theodore's job in the film, is a job that would now be done by ChatGPT, because his job is to write letters for people. That wouldn't be a human's job in this futuristic world. But also we're getting to the point where, because as I was mentioning earlier, it is less creepy because it is a disembodied voice and not like a
Slightly less creepy.
Slightly less creepy than if it was with a sex robot. And there is a scene where he hires a sex surrogate to be the physical embodiment of the voice, which I think something like that happens in Blade Runner 2049
I was
as
going
well,
to
doesn't
say,
it?
that's very Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
How romantic, Paul. You won me over.
No, but the point
This
is...
guy.
No. The point is, he's freaked out by that experience and then doesn't go through with it. So it's about his emotional bond with Scarlett Johansson. That's the point.
It's very kind of Lars and the Real Girl as well, I think.
Lars von Trier and the
Lars and the Real Girl. Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling likes
Lars
to
von
play.
Trier is not romantic in any way. I refuse to talk about it.
But yeah, the point is, like, now we are at a time when
this is happening.
Yeah, this is happening. And also going back to the sex surrogate thing, there are companies in Japan that are trying to link up these AI chatbots with hyper-realistic sex dolls. So we are...
Saturday at 4 p.m, Paul.
This will be the podcast version. But yeah, the point is, people are getting more and more isolated, and like, whilst we're all kind of more connected in the internet, like we're becoming more and more physically isolated. So
what a perfect Valentine's film to watch with your sweetheart.
Exactly. Well, no, this is one that's so...
Maybe you'll thank your lucky stars that you have a human.
Yeah, well, exactly. And personally, I think, yes, it is a heartbreaking film. But I think even if you're like alone on Valentine's Day, if you put this on, yes, it will make you very sad, but it will be cathartic. And I think it will make you happier than if you were to watch a Richard Curtis film on Valentine's Day. Because I think Richard Curtis's characters exist in a less real world than this one. For sure.
Definitely.
That's
There's
what
definitely
I'd say.
some very unromantic things that happen in Love Actually that are framed weirdly romantically.
Exactly. So I don't think her is that... I think it's just a genuinely sad and heartwarming portrayal of loneliness. And it's just, I like
How
it.
romantic.
I like it. But yeah,
You
it's
old
cathartic.
romantic, Paul.
If you just, as I've said before, if you just want to have a lovely little bit of a cry... then
Of
put
course
this on.
I do on Valentine's Day.
But also, regardless of that, it is just a gorgeous sci-fi film as well, because the cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. By Hoyt van Hoytma. They were trying to avoid the dystopian look of sci-fis, and like they avoid the colour blue and all that. I like that it's that not too distant future kind of sci-fi, so it's not like flying cars everywhere. It's the real world, but it's just slightly enhanced by the technology, like certain episodes of Black Mirror and all that kind of stuff.
I think it's a really interesting film because it's the near future. It's addressing that background kind of conversation of is technology bringing us closer together or taking us further apart. It's almost this paradoxical thing in the film where his form of connection, his form of being brought together with someone is actually the thing that's isolating him as well.
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting film, and
it's not like Taxi Driver, I think. It sounds very Travis Bickle.
But it's such a lovely ending, and then and it's about the... Anyway, well, we don't have time to get into this, but clearly we have some very different readings of this film. But I think you should all watch her and let us know what you think. Who's right? Whose reading is correct on this one?
Email us at
Picture
Show
at brumradio.com. But yeah, we really must move on. So Ben, what is your romantic film?
My romantic film is Punch Drunk Love, 2002, by Paul Thomas Anderson. So it follows socially frustrated Barry Egan, played by Adam Sandler, and he is quite a socially anxious, I think he's a salesman, isn't he? And he has quite a close relationship to his sisters, but they sort of bully him and tease him about his inability to form relationships with people. And
again, very imperfect.
Yeah, I mean, mine's got a happier. I think it's got. It starts off where he calls a phone sex line. So this is an embodied voice rather than a disembodied voice to try and curb his loneliness. And little does he know that it will land him in deep trouble, and it jeopardizes his burgeoning romance with Lena, who is played by Emily Watson, who is a good friend of Barry's sister. And it's a really interesting film because there's a lot of sort of external representation of internal feelings. So the score and the sound design is very anxiety inducing. There's a lot of drums and things like that, which reflect sort of neurons flying around in Barry's head.
It's a bit like the Birdman sound.
Exactly, yeah. And it's shot in that similar sort of way where you have this sort of almost invasion of privacy at the start of the film, where you've got someone who wants to isolate himself, who doesn't want to build relationships, who is sort of stuttering and struggling to communicate, and is sort of just muddling his way through life and is just being provoked by different things at different points. And it's this really beautiful film where, as it unfolds and he forms this sort of unconventional connection with Lena, that you see moments of him feeling comfortable or moments of him being able to express himself. But then bound up with that, you also just have his complete flaws on show the whole time, where he has horrific anger issues and really struggles with loneliness again, and has different behaviours at different points, which you wouldn't necessarily say were always smooth and straight and narrow.
I've not seen it. It's interesting because Paul Thomas Anderson seems to have two gears, which is like very super serious, like The Master, and then kind of wacky out there comedy stuff like Inherent Vice.
I think Punch Drunk Love does really well just sort of towing the line between it's got a serious point on like social anxiety and sort of relational detachment and things like that, and also just navigating family and pressure from family and how do you fit in within your family context. But it's also got this beautiful playfulness as well, where you have some really sweet moments and really sweet connections, and like some quite sentimental bits as well. It doesn't shy away from sentimentality, but it also has enough of a sort of groundedness that you understand that these are real people going through real things, as well as falling in love and having these romantic gestures or trips away and things like that. So yeah, it's a beautiful film. Definitely go and watch it. I think it's a great,
definitely on my watch list.
Yeah, and it's obviously a great it's a great Adam Sandler performance. And
Probably
he really
one of his best, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's fantastic. Like it was sort of that, like obviously Uncut Gems more recently was great, but that was probably the first time where people went, oh, Adam Sandler can actually turn it on when he wants to.
That is pretty much the extent of his like properly serious roles. I guess like stuff like Spanglish is a little bit less. It's not as out there as the his scam of a production company where basically all of his films have inflated budgets so that he can take his friends on holiday, basically.
Yeah.
But,
and I know we were going to mention quickly as well that the film has Philip Seymour Hoffman in, playing the Mattress Man, and it is one of the best cameos in cinematic history. He just completely steals it. He's hilarious.
Watch it just for that.
Watch it just for that. He's phenomenal. And it's in February. It's been this month. It's been 10 years since his death.
I remember that day, like devastating.
Yeah,
I don't think I've really been so devastated by a celebrity death, because like
it was horrible.
He was the
horrible,
best, and obviously such a tragic end to his life as well. And it's just like we've been robbed of so many further great performances. Philip Seymour Hoffman, the GOAT.
Yeah.
Imagine what he'd be in now. Imagine the performances we'd have.
Yeah, he's brilliant. Yeah. Generally, and brilliant in this.
And Paul Thomas Anderson worked with his son recently on Licorice Pizza.
Of course. Which is also great. But yeah, I love Paul Thomas Anderson. So yeah, everyone watch Punch Drunk Love. So now it is time for our review section, just a little roundup of the things that we have watched recently. So Ben, I believe you saw something that people have been talking about.
Yes, I saw All of Us Strangers by Andrew Haigh. So he's directed other films like Weekend and 45 Years and Lean on Pete, I believe. So this is described as a romantic fantasy film starring Andrew Scott as Adam and Paul Mescal, who plays Harry, who's his neighbour. So Adam is a lonely London screenwriter. There's a theme of loneliness going through this episode. And he is sort of, I guess, flirted with by Harry from a distance. He then comes up to the flat, knocks on his door, asks to be invited in. Adam sort of rebuffs him. But then later on in the film, they form a connection. And basically something happens which allows Adam, for whatever reason, it's not particularly explained in the film, to be able to go back to his childhood home and to meet his parents, who are the age they were on the day they died. And Adam was 12 when they died, and he is able to go back and talk to them, and they're able to see him growing up and living as a writer. And it's a really interesting atmosphere to the film. There's some amazing song choices in it. That fantasy element does come through. And you've got these kind of slightly strange connections between people. If anyone's seen Petit Maman by Celine Sciamma, it's that sort of thing of like children or adults being able to go back to see their parents or their children or their kind of close relationships at a different point, or they get to see them growing up, or they get to see their parents when they're younger. It's that kind of like fantasy realism that's at play. There's a lot of trauma in the film, and it's definitely a film that foregrounds that trauma and the loneliness that comes around processing the grief and the different things that happen to us and the people that we love. Yeah. I liked some aspects of it and didn't like others. I think conceptually it was really interesting, but potentially wasn't executed in a perfect way. So I know it's based on a book. And I think they took some of the stuff from the book, but changed other parts. I think for me there were like some inconsistencies there which kind of held me at a bit of a distance. The performances from Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal are brilliant, and there are some amazing scenes between them in particular. I think Claire Foy does an amazing job as Adam's mother as well. I think a lot of people have connected to it, and I think a lot of people struggle with the things that they have said to their parents or the things they haven't said to their parents, or like other relationships that are close to them. I think it's definitely tapped into that, which is why I think people have responded to it so well. So yeah, I definitely worth a watch. I think I had really high expectations for it, and it didn't quite hit those high expectations, but I can totally understand why other people have really connected to it and why they can vouch for it as deserving of BAFTA noms and whatnot.
It's always dangerous to have expectations, isn't it, in life and love and movies?
Is it?
Absolutely.
Would you say it's a good Valentine's Day viewing?
It is very sad. Like, it is a very sad film.
A lot like every other film we've mentioned today.
Yeah. I wouldn't, like, there are romantic elements, and it does feel like there's an authenticity to the relationships.
But there's more
but
to it.
But there's more to it, and the trauma definitely comes to the surface as the kind of main driver of the film.
Okay.
And there's not loads of respite from that. It feels like it does kind of pervade through a lot of the film, the kind of elephants in the room and things that have taken place.
There's elephants.
So
there's no elephants. There's no elephants.
So not when
but
Harry met
maybe the
Sally
elephants would have given some respite. Maybe.
Well, that sounds like something that I should maybe check out, or maybe not.
I still would like to check it out.
No, it's been getting a lot of buzz, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I
And Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal are brilliant actors, so I think be interesting to see what it's all about. Have an opinion. That's why we watch films these days, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
So we can have opinions.
Put our opinions on the internet.
Well, I liked it.
So Nadine, have you watched anything recently?
I've watched a few things. I watched Maestro. I'm not going to get too into it. It didn't quite come together for me. Less than the sum of its parts. There are some amazing moments. The cinematography is good. There's some with the performances. There are some brilliant moments, but on the whole, it didn't gel for me, and I felt like I could feel the effort.
Was it aggressively sincere?
The most aggressively sincere film I think I've ever seen. Yeah, so Bradley Cooper. I think Bradley Cooper might have been miscast. I think
he miscast himself.
Yeah, I think Carey Mulligan, excellent. She's gotten brilliant notices for it. I think everybody felt like they were in a 1940s film to like the 10th degree. Like, oh, darling, do you know, like just the way the transatlantic accent just dripping off the walls. Very, very like, look at this transition, like, aren't I a good director? And I think the script just wasn't there. There are some amazing moments though. There's a very climactic scene at Ely Cathedral, I think it is, and I've seen the real footage and they really capture, it's about Leonard Bernstein, the conductor, who worked on films such as West Side Story. So very well-known, beloved conductor, thought of as a bit of a genius. But it's more about his relationship with his wife, but also his relationships with men. We don't know whether he considered himself to be gay or bisexual, but he had relationships with both men and women. And this is focusing on that, on the relationship with his wife. So, maybe not perfect Valentine's Day viewing, but it is a love story. It might not be a sexual love story, but it's a there is a romance between them. There is a very deep friendship between them. Whether that you would call that romantic love or not, I don't know. But yeah, for me, it just didn't quite work. But some people have loved it. It's got an Oscar buzz. It's also been accused of being Oscar bait, which it definitely is, I think. But Leonard Bernstein is a very fascinating character. I'd love to know more about him. If you're looking for something that goes into his process and how he made his incredible music and things like that, this isn't that film. But yeah, worth checking out. Wasn't for me. And I also watched Bottoms by Emma Seligman, which might be an interesting Valentine's Day choice. It's about two lesbian girls in high school who start their own fight club to get laid. So yeah, a bit of a slightly different choice for Valentine's Day. They're very funny, very heightened. It's definitely a movie, which took me a little while to sort of get into. Because some of the characters, you're like, well, this is a bit mad. Very funny. Emma Seligman directed Shiver Baby, which also stars Rachel Sennett, and Ayo Edebiri stars in this as well. Just getting lots of love on Letterboxd. So definitely check this one out. It's very, heightened high school comedy about some girls who start a fight club. Why wouldn't you watch that on Valentine's Day?
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Right up my street. Yes. Well, yeah, I fully intended to see some new releases. And then I was like, ooh, 50th anniversary of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yes, please. So I went to see that.
How romantic.
How romantic indeed. So I guess the world doesn't need another review of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But I will say it's a masterpiece, but it's one of those perfect examples of lightning in a bottle films in that it's just not something that could be replicated, and it has no right to be as good as it is. Because let's face it, Tobe Hooper didn't exactly come close to this ever again in his life. Like people like Poltergeist, but I don't.
Did he direct that?
But yeah, exactly. So they reckon Spielberg directed a lot of that anyway.
Yeah.
So it just kind of feels like it's one of those films that. It's like the With Nail and I. I've come on holiday by mistake. We've made a masterpiece by mistake. Like it's just somehow it just came together into this just absolutely genius pinnacle of horror, basically. And a lot of it is down to the sound design. A lot of it is down to the kind of rough and ready documentary style approach. And it's just, I don't know, I just think it's absolutely, a perfect horror film. But anyway, we all know the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is good, or at least I thought we all knew that until I went to see this with this audience. Right, so I'm just going to review my experience of seeing this film very briefly.
Oh, gosh.
I was angry. So basically, this was put on by DMP, who I'm interested by what they do, because they seem to be putting on quite a few. They're putting on like old horror films in a lot of Odeons by the looks of it.
Yeah, went to see Blood and Black Lace and Black Sabbath. Double bill. So do check them out.
So like some properly decent stuff, and I think soon they've got a Scanners and Brain Dead double bill coming up, and I really like the way they present it, because they start off the film showing actual old trailers that would have accompanied the film in its original run. So it's all kind of that's really cool to see, just like these films that you've never heard of, because obviously, back in the 70s, they were just churning out all these slasher films that never really were immortalised.
And you get an intermission.
And you get
unlike Killers of the Flower Moon.
Exactly. But I will say one thing, DMP, because you're obviously listening. I really like what you're doing. but don't bring a QR code into the equation in the middle of your trailers, because it kind of ruins because I genuinely thought I was in the 70s for a brief moment, and then this QR code comes up and I was like, well, that's kind of ruined it. So put your QR codes at the beginning, please, and then let us be immersed in the olden times. But no, it's really cool that they're doing that, because I was like, that's wicked. However, I saw it with completely the wrong crowd, apparently, and it was just, honestly, I've never felt so old in my life. I was very conscious that this was a very young crowd I was watching it with, and they are not used to this kind of pacing in a horror film. They just did not get it. So for a lot of it, the audience were audibly bored. Like pockets of conversation would start popping up. People were sighing and groaning. People were laughing at all the wrong moments, because Texas Chainsaw Massacre is, in a way, a black comedy. There are really funny moments. Like I just love how Leatherface is just panicking. Like, he's just like, where are all these teenagers coming from? They just keep turning up, and he's just got to sledgehammer them, and then he's just kind of running around, just going, what's going on? He's like, in R. Hanson's performance, he's like genuinely baffled, and it is quite farcical. And it's just like, there's wonderful lines like, you ruined the door, like that being the most outrageous thing that Leatherface had done that day. But these children that I was watching this film with, they were laughing in all the wrong moments. Like, they weren't laughing at the bits that are supposed to be funny. They were like laughing at the cheesy old man makeup and all that kind of stuff. And there was a couple that walked out a third of the way through talking loudly about how old the film was. And it was just like,
maybe they thought that it was the remake, the recent remake.
Well, exactly, because I mean, good on them for going to try it out, I suppose. But yeah, maybe they did just think it was the remake.
Have to loudly talk as they
I
left
know,
there.
but that's the thing. The whole
cinema etiquette gone wrong.
I know, but basically most of the people in the audience were just kind of paying no reverence to this film, and I was just like, I was so sad. I was like, oh, is this what it's come to? The young people, they don't get it. They just don't get it. And I was just thinking, if I felt old, imagine being someone who was actually around when Texas Chainsaw Massacre was released. Imagine how they must have felt sat in that audience and just seeing the younglings not appreciate it. So I'm always very pro the cinema going experience a lot of the time, because sometimes seeing a film with an audience can absolutely make your experience. When an audience is on board with the film you're watching, it can be one of the greatest things. And even when people are vocal about it, that can be wonderful as long as they're vocal in the right way. But this just made me think that, my goodness, people are awful, aren't they? What
a sentiment to end our Valentine's Day show.
Well, yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
People are awful.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to mention. People, rubbish, aren't they?
Got it off your chest.
Yeah. So happy Valentine's Day, everyone. That's almost all we got time for this week, but we just have time for Nadine's roundup of local news and events.
So, on February the 11th and 12th, the Electric Cinema will be showing The Apartment. Do check out their screenings. They've got lots of great 35mm films being shown that you won't be able to see elsewhere. So do check out their website. On the 14th of Feb, we've teamed up with Blowwater. Blowwater will be showing In the Moon for Love, which we mentioned earlier, at the Hare and Hounds. Snooze you lose on this one, guys. I think it might be sold out. And the same with Past Lives on the 22nd of February at the Cuban Embassy. So, do buy those tickets when they're released. These are popular events. Journey Film Club will be showing Pink Flamingos on the 20th of February. The Feckenodian, our favourite, in Feckenham Village Hall, will be showing The Man Who Knew Too Much on the 24th of February. And on the 28th, Whatever Pays the Rent will play Moon Age Daydream, one of the first films we ever screened. And they will be showing that at the Hare and Hounds. And then, lastly, on the 29th of February, Sturchley Open Cinema, our rivals, will be having a film quiz at the Brum Brewery. So do check that event out as well.
Lovely. Well, there we go. That's some events that you can see in this Valentine's season. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Do be sure to join in next week, where we'll be discussing something else. And as always, don't forget to email us at pictureshow@brumradio.com.
Or on our social media at ScreenB14, hashtag Brum Picture Show. You can get in touch with us that way as well. And check us out on Letterboxd, Brum Picture Show.
So yeah, whether you're loved up or alone, have a lovely Valentine's period, and we will catch you next time. In the meantime, it's goodbye from me, Paul.
Goodbye from me, Nadine.
And goodbye from me, Ben.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to The Brum Picture Show, a Screen B14 production for Brum Radio. Tune in next time for more film fun, and don't forget to email us at pictureshow@brumradio.com. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Return of the Living Dead, there was something that really stuck in my head as a child that I just did not get. There was a boyfriend and girlfriend, and the boy was turned into a zombie. And there's a moment where the girl lets him eat her brains.
Oh, that's sweet.
And I remember saying to my dad, like, why does she do that? Like, that's mad. And then he was like, yeah, it's because she loves him, or it's love. And I was just like, ugh. So that's probably why I'm still alone.
How old were you when?
About 5.
Yeah, that.
I've never known the kind of love that would let my partner eat my brain.
Thank you for listening to this Brum Radio podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us on your podcast app.